So in yesterday's today we're going to discuss about ADF concept, Azure Data Factory. Basically, operations in the bank, like for example, deposits, withdrawals, online transfer, balance inquiry. So you're going to perform operations means data is going to modify in the data source database, right? And got it. So now these databases are volatile databases. These databases can be modified by the users anytime. So these databases contains only current data, right? For example, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle database, IBM DB2 database 2000, MySQL, PostgreSQL, Teradata, right? So some other databases also there, but Teradata is different concept basically. MS Access, PostgreSQL. These are RDBMS databases. So now generally what happens, we store data in the form of databases, data sources. You can ask some question here. If you're aware of databases file system, why we are going to store data in the form of databases means security, performance. Performance means what? Speed, accessing speed of the database. For example, you are maintaining database. Whose data is going to store in the database? Customer's data. If you are not going to provide performance, customer is not going to work with you, right? That's the reason why we are going for databases. So here, the thing is data factory. Basically, Azure data factory concept is ETL environment. Extraction, transformation, load. Right? This concept, ETL concept is related to data warehouse. So here, what is this data warehouse? What is this ETL? In the same way, what is this database? When if there is no database, there is no ETL, there is no data warehouse, right? In the same way, what is this cloud concept? These things I'm going to discuss today, right? See, basically what happens, we are going to store data in the form of data sources. These data sources are OLTP sources, in the same way, volatile sources. So OLTP stands for online transaction process. Volatile means it purely comes under modifications. Anytime you can modify data in the database. So here important thing is You take banking sector. Suppose you want to open account in some bank, so you can connect it to bank application. So in that application, you can fill the form. Then your data is going to store in bank database, right? In the same way, after opening bank account, you are going to perform operations in the bank, like for example, deposits, withdrawals, online transfer, balance inquiry. So you're going to perform operations means data is going to modify in the data source database, right? Got it. So now these databases are volatile databases. These databases can be modified by the users anytime. So these databases contains only current data, right? For example, Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle database, IBM DB2 database 2000, MySQL, PostgreSQL, Teradata, right? So some other databases also there, but Teradata is different concept basically. MS Access, PostgreSQL. These are RDBMS databases. So now generally what happens, we store data in the form of databases, data sources. You can ask some question here. If you're aware of databases file system, why we are going to store data in the form of databases means security, performance. Performance means what? Speed, accessing speed of the database. For example, you are maintaining database. Whose data is going to store in the database? Customer's data. If you are not going to provide performance, customer is not going to work with you, right? That's the reason why we are going for databases. So here, the thing is, these data sources are going to modify every time. So these databases contains current data. But see, data warehouse concept is different concept. Data warehouse concept is used to store historical data, because data warehouse database is for data analysis purpose, right? Analyzing data, creating report. That is the purpose of data warehouse basically. So here what's happening? You are working with current data, then you cannot perform analysis. That's why what we are doing, we are going to maintain some environment here, separate database. That is, so data warehouse database. This is comes under OLAP and non-volatile database. So now data is going to transfer from data sources to data warehouse database. Suppose you transfer data from data sources to data warehouse database, then you cannot go for modifications because it is non-volatile environment. Okay, na? That means what happens? This environment contains only historical data. So what type of data is required for data analysis. Historical data is required for us. Got my point? And that's what we are doing here. Okay, fine. But now how the data is going to transfer means in the beginning, you're going to extract data from the source. In this location, you are going to transform data, and finally, you are going to load data into destination. So what are the letters of these words? Starting letters ETL, extraction, transformation, load. So you are going to extract the data from the sources, then transform data, load data into data warehouse database, destination. Transformation, there is some spell mistake, don't mind. So what is the meaning of transformation? Generally, when I'm talking about transformation, you feel like data is going to modify. That is not correct. So transformation means, for example, you have some table in the source. You're going to copy table from source to data warehouse database. But you need only some part of the table. You need only some data of the table. Then you're going to write some condition, filter, so that only required data is going to copy from the source to data warehouse. This type of scenarios comes under transformations. Got my point? So if you want to perform ETL operations, you need some tool. The tool name from Microsoft Corporation, we have SSIS and ADF. SSIS tool is on-premises environment, on-premises ETL tool. ADF is cloud-based ETL. So now it's better to discuss about what is on-premises, what is cloud. That I'm going to discuss. Don't worry. Before that, there are some issues here in this environment. The thing is, suppose you are working with some databases. For example, you are working with some OLTP databases. What is the maximum capacity? For example, you go to regular RDBMS databases. Maximum 10 TB can be stored, terabytes. See, nowadays, terabytes, nothing. Even your laptops, we are maintaining terabytes of the disk, right? Long back, terabyte means bapre. Terabyte, but now it is simple. So your capacity, what's happening, when you are working with RDBMS databases, maximum 10 TB, 20 TB capacity. Suppose we have some data warehouse related RDBMS databases, something like Teradata, Netezza, Vertica, some other databases also there. There also maximum 100 GB, 100 TB, 200 TB maximum, 250. Not 200 TB maximum, I think. Right? And but here what's happening, we have some clients in the market. For example, you take LinkedIn. You know LinkedIn, right? In the same way, Facebook is the best example. Facebook is the best example. Facebook. Per day, they are going to get a terabyte size of the data. Not complete data. Not complete data. Per day, they are going to get terabyte size of the data. So it's here what's happening, they cannot store that data in these OLTP databases. Right? So you can ask some questions, sir. Data source means you are given some databases names. Okay, fine. No. Data warehouse database means what? See, for example, your data source is SQL server. Your data warehouse is also SQL server only, but some other environment, some other server. Data warehouse is concept only, right? And data warehouse database also we are going to store in these RDBMS databases only. That's why I'm discussing about capacity. So clients' requirements are changing. Previously, they used to work with the gigabytes size of the data, but now terabytes is quite common nowadays. But here important thing is, okay, fine, you are maintaining terabytes data. That is not enough. You have to provide security and performance. That system is required for us. Okay. So here, sometimes what happens, some environments, suppose we have some e-cart sites, Amazon, Flipkart. Per day, they're going to get millions, billions, trillions of the operations, data, proofs. There, how they can use these RDBMS databases, they cannot. They need something like, unlimited data storage. In the same way, performance also. Right? And unlimited data storage is required. In the same way, performance is also required. So they cannot use these environments. Got my point? So they are looking for cloud. Azure cloud, Hadoop, AWS. So we have different cloud environments. So they are looking at cloud environments. Got my point? So when companies are migrating from on-premises to cloud, see, based on requirement only, just based on requirement only, they are going to migrate from on-premises to cloud. Got my point? So now let us see what is the difference between on-premises and cloud environment. For example, you take your laptop. In your laptop, you are going to install SQL Server. Right? And after installation, you are going to create database, you are going to work with the database, but where you are going to work in your laptop only, right? That is your local environment. That is our local environment. So everything will be there in our local environment only. That is on-premises environment. At my point. So you are only going to purchase license, hardware, you are going for installation, maintenance also you are only going to do. Because everything is there in our local environment only, right? And maintenance also you are only going to do. When it comes to cloud, pay as you go. Right? For example, there is some cloud provider, Azure, Microsoft. Right? And so you need something, some ETL tool is required, some database is required. Yes, you are going to discuss with them. See, I need these things. Can you provide? Yeah, they can provide. So you are not going to maintain anything in our local environment. They are going to give you account, and in that account, they are going to provide everything as per your requirement, right? Then you are going to work with that. So after finishing your work, you just save it and log out. They are only going to maintain it. So here, these cloud environments, can provide storage, terabytes, unlimited storage. In the same way, they can provide security, they can provide performance also. That's what client requires. So now that is the difference between on-premises environment and cloud environment, right? On-premises and cloud environment. So now, see, not only SSIS, coming to on-premises ETL tools, not only SSIS, SSIS is from Microsoft Corporation. It's part of MSBI, Microsoft Business Intelligence. I think you heard about it. In the same way, we have Informatica tool, Data Stage tool, Talend, Ab initio, different tools there in the market, ETL tools, but they are on-premises tools, right? ADF, Azure Data Factory, is a cloud-based ETL environment, right? So if you want to perform ETL operations in cloud, then you're going to work with the ADF tool. So you can ask some questions, sir, why we are going for ADF? Tell me. See, I already discussed. There is no maintenance cost. No infrastructure required from our end. Software, hardware, network, disk. Everything will be provided by a provider only, right? And then why you are going for infrastructure maintenance? No need, right? That is the advantage of working with the cloud environment, cloud ETLs. Right. Here, now you can ask some questions, sir. Anyhow, we are going to work with ADF. We know that, like, we got some information now. ADF is ETL tool, Azure-based ETL. Fine. So, what are the things we are going to learn here? See, Azure SQL, Microsoft. In the same Azure, data lake is also required. We are going to discuss. And ADF we are going to discuss. In the same way, some part of Azure Databricks, just introduction kind of things we are going to discuss. See, now your question is, see, this training is for only ADF, Azure Data Factory. Why you are going to discuss Azure SQL, Azure Data Lake, Azure Databricks? Azure SQL, Azure Data Lake, I'm going to discuss completely. Databricks, just introduction kind of things we're going to discuss. The reason is storage. ETL is just a tool only. Am I right or not? ETL is just a tool. But storage is required because you're working with ETL tool means you're going to work with some source and some destinations. What is source and destination? Source is database related only. Destination is also database related only. Right? And right? So these things we are going to discuss in this training. Because in the beginning only, better to provide complete information to you. Otherwise, what happens, you're going to face confusion. I know that most of the people are new to this environment, right? So here, okay, that's fine. What's happening, in this environment, ADF environment, how we are going to work out these things. So I'll give you a simple scenario, then I'll explain more on ADF. Okay, na? Let's do one thing. For example, generally what happens, so we are just going to store data in different ways, data sources. On-premises data sources and cloud data sources. Suppose this is data lake and Azure data lake, and this is Azure data warehouse. Azure data warehouse means generally Azure SQL only. So this is a ADF environment, like this. So we are going to extract data from different data sources. Sometimes on-premises data sources like Microsoft SQL Server. Sometimes cloud, Google Analytics, Hadoop Big Data. So, but anyhow, we are going to extract data into local storage, data lake, Azure data lake. See, this is blob, BLOB storage. In this, you can store structured data, semi-structured data, unstructured data. Structured data means databases, tables. Semi-structured data means files and file system. Unstructured data means photos, audios, videos, images, right? So any type of data can be stored in this data lake. That is the advantage of working with the data lake, right? So what is this data lake? This is storage, Azure cloud storage. You are going to work with ADF only, but you should know storage, how it works, how the files are going to store, how the tables are going to store in this environment, how to create storage accounts. So these things. That means Azure data lake related scenarios we are going to practice. Azure data warehouse means Azure SQL server, cloud SQL. So if you don't know cloud SQL, then how can you work with Azure data warehouse? You cannot work. Forget about ADF, right? Got my point? Azure data warehouse is Azure SQL only. If you don't know Azure SQL, then how can you work with this environment? You cannot. You cannot work. So what I'm trying to explain, we are going to work with the data lake storage related scenarios, even Azure SQL related scenarios. We are going to work. Okay. Then we are going to use ADF. What is the purpose of ADF? Transferring data from different data sources to data warehouse destination by using transformations. Got it? And this is what the thing we are going to learn. That means I'm giving you clarity more what we are going to discuss in this training. Okay. So along with them, we have to work with something like, SQL queries part required for us. In the same way, some of data warehouse concepts we are going to work. Right? So now coming to next scenario. Here we are going to work with the next step, that is inside ADF. What are the things we are going to do? Suppose this is my ADF environment. See, actually in ADF, we are going to work with some concept called as pipeline. See, pipeline means nothing, ETL operation. Whatever the ETL operation you are going to perform, that is called pipeline. So this pipeline is going to connect to some data sources and a destination. Got it? So here you are going to work with source data. Source data set. In the same way, destination data set. Data set means what? Data. Table you can understand easily. There is some table in the source you are going to extract. And here you are going to work with some activities. What are those activities? Transformations. And then load data into destination. This is what you are going to do by using pipelines. So in this, not only transformations, we are going to work with the linked services also. So linked services means connections. See, you are going to work with sources, destinations, connections you are going to create, right? That we are using linked services concept. In the same year, we are going to work with the trigger concept also. Trigger means execution of the pipeline. Suppose you created some pipeline to transfer data from source to destination in ADF environment. Then you are going to execute that pipeline, right? Then only your task is going to complete. Otherwise, it is not going to complete. Got my point? Even you can go for a scheduling triggering also. Trigger schedule concept also we are going to work. Okay. So these things, activities we are going to perform. In the same way, see, maximum your target is Azure SQL, destination. Sometimes you are going to extract data from Azure SQL source. That is also there. That's what I discussed previously. So here, maximum we are going to work with the data lake concept, or sometimes we are going to work with Azure SQL concept. These things okay, because anyhow we are going to discuss data lake related storage and Azure SQL databases we are going to discuss. Actually, this destination I said, what I said destination is Azure data warehouse. Previously, I discussed data destination is what? Azure SQL data warehouse. Nowadays, we are calling this one as Azure Synapse. I'm sorry. Okay, na? This concept, Azure Synapse concept is Azure data warehouse analytics. So even in this data lake, we have Gen 1, Gen 2. We are going to use Gen 2 storage, Gen 1, Gen 2. So here, this data lake concept, Azure, Synapse, like the data warehouse, storage, these are different things. ADF is different. ADF is just ETL only. Got my point? And I said like something about data bricks concept. Actually, data bricks Spark environment. Spark concept. Even we have Azure Cosmos DB also. Document storage purpose we use that. That we call it as NoSQL. NoSQL. No SQL. Even Azure streaming is also there. Streaming means like continuous data flow. Streaming means, right? So different things there in storage also. But what you are going to learn in this training is ADF. But only ADF is not enough. If you want to work with ADF, you should know other things. What are the other things required? Storage related, right? These are also required for us. I said like, what are the responsibilities and challenges you are going to perform, face? Data storage, I already discussed. Terabyte size of the data per day, millions of zeros. Capable to work with any type of data. Structured data, unstructured data, semi-structured data, right? And so where you are going to, where you can store this data, unstructured, you can store it in data lake. So we are going to work with the data lake concept that is required, right? Data processing. Data processing means what? Transferring data. But here also what you need to maintain, security in the same way, performance. That is mandatory. Right? That's my point. So these are all really required for us. So different types of pipelines you are going to build. RDBMS related, file system related, NoSQL related, no? Streaming data related. Different types of pipelines you are going to prepare here. Got my point? Different types of databases you are going to work. For example, you are going to work with some RDBMS databases like Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, DB2, some other databases like MongoDB, Cassandra, right? Different things there in the market. So web-based data also we are going to work. So finally, sir, why we are doing this one? Like I said, like data warehouse database, why we are maintaining? I mean, Azure Synapse Analytics, why we are maintaining? Report creation purpose only. After finishing your ETL work, where data is going to store? Tell me. Data is going to store in a data warehouse environment only, right? And data is going to store in data warehouse environment only. Got it? So there what's happening? Tell me. You're going to, not you're going to provide required data to reporting tools, right? You're going to provide required data to reporting tools. So these things you are going to learn, these things you are going to work in this train, So this is the way like how we are working. So now I discussed, I just overview only I discussed it today, right? And tomorrow's class, I'm going to work more on ADF. What are the roles and responsibilities there for ADF developer? How the market there? We have very good market for ADF right now. 1 year, 2 years, 3 years experience, 4 years experience. We're getting calls. right? But practical knowledge is required. So how to go for practice? Everything I'm going to show in tomorrow's class. Don't miss tomorrow's class. If you're attending tomorrow's class, you'll get clarity. Okay, fine. So this is the thing we are going to do in ADF environment. The type of clarity you're going to get after finishing tomorrow's class. Got it? So these are the things from my end for today. And tomorrow we'll discuss about remaining things. Then we are going to start with practical part. Okay, right? Fine then. See you. Okay, right, all of you. So in yesterday's class, we discussed about some scenarios related to Azure Data Factory. There I clearly discussed about introduction, what is Azure Data Factory, how it is going to work, right? What are the things we are doing, everything we discussed clearly there. So today, we'll discuss more on this environment, Azure Data Factory related only. So basically, ADF, Azure Data Factory, we know that this is cloud ETL environment. So ETL, extraction, transformation, load. What is the purpose of ETL tool? We already discussed in yesterday's class. In the same way, on-premises environment, cloud environment, right? On-premises and cloud. So what is the difference between on-premises ETL tools and cloud ETL tools? We discussed in yesterday's class, right? Generally, suppose you have less amount of data, generally you can go for on-premises ETL tools. But if you have huge data, better to go for cloud environment because maintenance purpose in the same way, you know, what we call like storage, security, performance, different things we are going to work, right? So your important point already we discussed ETL operations, right? So ETL or ELT. So generally what happens, you know, we are going to work with different data sources. Here we are going to perform data extraction and we are going to load data into this environment, right? So here data extraction means what is happening, you know, it is going to connect to data source, connected to data source. So data source means what type of data sources? Sometimes we are going to work with the databases. Sometimes we are going to work with the files. See, you can ask questions. Sir, yesterday you discussed some other points, like for example, we have like what we call on-premises databases, cloud databases, different things you discussed. Okay, see, whether you are going to connect to on-premises database or cloud database, it comes under a database connection only. Am I right or not? Okay, na? Right. So you are going to connect it to different data sources. From there, you are going to extract the data, right? So here, where you are going to load data. See, here I'm not given it as data warehouse. Yesterday's class, I discussed like we are going to load data into data warehouse. In the beginning of yesterday's class, I discussed. But after that, I have given clarity. So in the beginning, what's happening? We are going to copy data from different data sources to Azure data lake, right? And Azure data lake in the same way, Azure SQL database also. but finally you are going to store it into warehouse. Okay, na? So here what's happening, so loading data into data lake. So in data lake, we have Gen 1 and Gen 2. Generally, we are going to work with Gen 2 data lake technologies only because of blob storage, BLOB, right? And so this is regular scenario. So here what's happening, sometimes we are going to work with Synapse also. Synapse, what is the meaning of Synapse? Yesterday we discussed Azure Data Warehouse. We also call it as what? Azure Synapse, right? And so that is the point. So previously we used to call it as Azure Data Warehouse. Now it is Azure Synapse only. Got my point? And so you're going to extract data. See, we don't know. Sometimes what's happening, we are directly going to store data into data lake environment. So sometimes we are going to store it into Azure Data Warehouse. But remember, if you want to store data into Synapse, what we are going to do, we are going to work with the transformations, right? And this is what ETL. See, directly if you want to store data into data lake or storage account, then what happens? You are not going to work with the transformations. Directly you are going to load data into Azure storage. But see, you are extracting data from the sources. You want to store data into Azure Data Warehouse database, then you are going to perform transformations, ETL operation. What type of operation is it? ETL. Got my point? So here when I'm discussing about the transformations, how you are going to perform these transformations. Got my point? So here pipeline concept we are using. So where we are going to perform these transformations means by using pipeline only, we are going to perform these transformations. Right? So we have different types of pipelines, and Synapse pipeline is available in the same way. We can also go for Azure Databricks related also we can. Okay. Azure Databricks related also we can. Even yesterday also I discussed this point. See, Synapse pipeline, this concept we are going to work out in the beginning. So Databricks concept is somewhat different concept again. Got my point? So data lake is different, data bricks is different. Remember, please. Data lake concept is different, data bricks concept is different. So here I discussed about the data lake storage. So data bricks is different concept. Maintain clarity because you are entirely new to this environment, right? And better to maintain clarity from the beginning. Otherwise, you are going to face confusions. At my point. So what is this pipeline concept? Yesterday we discussed pipeline means the task you are going to perform in ADF. Task means what? ETL operation. The ETL operation you are going to perform in ADF environment, that is called as pipeline. We discussed pipeline is going to connect to some data sources, destinations, data sets, right? Linked services, triggering for execution purpose. Different things we discussed in yesterday's class, right? So these are the things we have. In the same way, yesterday little bit we discussed something like, what is the difference between on-premises ETL tools, cloud ETL tools. Little discussion because it was demo session yesterday, right? So we did little discussion only. But what are the advantages there for ETL? I mean, this tool. What is this tool? ADF tool means. See, What happened? So, as we discussed in the yesterday's class, no infrastructure required. Okay, no infrastructure required. Why? Why infrastructure is not required? Because if it is on-premises environment, you are only going to install, maintain in our local environment. Got my point? That you are going to do in your local environment, everything. But here you are not going to do anything in our local environment, right? Everything is cloud-based. Pay as you go. You are going to pay the amount as per our requirement. So in the same way, no coding. So we are not going to work with any type of coding in this ADF environment. That's why it is suitable for non-technical people also, right? Low maintenance cost. So maintenance means, for example, you install SQL Server. You have to take care of everything because that is on premises. Suppose server is down, server is not working. Who is going to take care? You only, because that is your local environment. But here it is different. It's not your local environment, right? And so everything, there is some service provider, they are providing everything to us, right? We are going to use them. That's why maintenance, less maintenance, low maintenance, really. So are you going for any licensed software? No license. Why no license? Because you are not installing any software, right? They're already providing everything. That is the advantage of working with the cloud environment. Everything will be provided by them only. You are going to use them, just pay and use, right? So these are all advantages of working with ADF, not only ADF, cloud environment. You go to any cloud environment, these are all advantages. Got my point? This is the way like how the companies are looking towards cloud environments. There are a lot of advantages. Because of that reason only companies, clients are looking for cloud. Even for software engineers also, it is easy to work, right? So graphical user interface. What type of tool is it? Graphical user interface, right? So these things, these are the advantages. Because of these advantages only, companies are working with ADF nowadays. So now coming to next scenario. Even yesterday's class, I have given some idea. So what are the things we are going to perform in ADF? What are the different tasks we are going to perform? I discussed about pipelines, linked services, data sets, different things I discussed. So now let us see them clearly. See, in ADF environment, what you are going to build. Basically, you are going to work with the pipelines concept, right? And inside pipeline, we are going to work with the different types of activities. See, I can say one thing. Actually, no need to type activities there separately. The reason is, what is pipeline means? It is collection of the activities you are going to perform in ADF environment. Okay, na? It is collection of the activities you are going to perform in ADF environment. That is called pipeline. That is the definition of the pipeline in ADF. So now you can ask question, sir, what type of activities we are going to perform? So we are going to work with the linked services. So linked service means simply I can say connection to different data sources, destinations. Here what's happening, we have different data sources in the same different data destinations. That is ETL environment means, right? And that's what we are doing here. In the same way, we have something called as IR concept. IR means integration runtime, right? In the same way, we are going to work with the data sets also. Data set means simple. I can say like it is, suppose your data source is table, destination is, sorry, your data source is database, destination is database. Data set means table only. How the data is going to store in the form of tables, right? Sorry, I think this is the fifth point. So we have some other scenario, new thing, that is data flow. So this data flow concept newly introduced into ADF environment. So data flow, it was there in some other ETL environments. Even we have data flow concept in Power BI also, but it is newly introduced into this. So we are going to work with that also. Don't worry about that. Okay. So coming to next scenario, we have to work more on this. This pipeline concept, we have to work more. I can say, so base the entire operations in Power BI environment. Base is what? In ADF, what is the base for ADF? Base for ADF is pipeline only, no doubt. So what you are going to create in ADF environment means simply you can say you are going to create pipelines in ADF environment. That's what you are going to do. Right? And I said like, what is this ADF concept? Sorry, what is this pipeline concept? What I said, pipeline means it is collection of different activities. So whatever the different activities you are going to perform in this environment, we call them as pipeline. So what are these things? Activities. Different activities you are going to perform here. That is called pipeline, collection of the activities. So activities means what type of activities you are going to perform here. What type of activities? Data related activities only. Data operations only we are performing, right? And Shriram, close this door. Okay, help me. Data related activities only we are going to perform. So data related activities means ETL operations, because you are working with ETL tool, right? You are working with ETL tool and so data related operations means what? Copy data concept. Basically ETL means copy data concept. So actually here I'll give you some examples. Copy data activity. So copy data activity means, again, we can say different things here. For example, copying data from containers, I mean files to file source to destinations, files to SQL Server database, Azure SQL. And SQL means Azure SQL only because we are working with Azure environment. Forget about on-premises because you are not working with on-premises tools now. You are working with the cloud. So copy data activity means copying data from file to file, file to SQL, SQL to SQL, this type of activities. So in the same way, metadata related activities, condition based operations. Condition based means if else. So because of that reason only, what I'm saying, is there any prerequisite for the ADF? Means some people say that no, directly you can start working with ADF. But I say better to learn something about SQL. If else concept, you don't know anything about if else. Conditional statements. We call them as conditional statements basically in SQL environment. So you don't know anything about if else concept. Directly I'm taking you to ADF. How can you understand ADF concept? Tell me. In ADF directly I'm going to show you some activity, if else conditional statement related activity. Can you follow me? No, you cannot. In the same way, we have some other activities for each activities, looping activities. Generally, even we have on-premises environment from Microsoft Corporation. I told you SSIS, SQL Server Integration Services. There we have some concept called as containers concept. For loop container, for each loop container, right? Sequence container. So different types of container tasks available, right? Right. So those container tasks also really important for us. So see, if you know SSIS, that is advantage, but that is not mandatory, right? Because that is on-premises environment. But we are working with cloud environment now. ADF is cloud environment, right? And so what I'm trying to say, suppose you know something about SQL, queries part, that will help you. No doubt. Now you can ask some questions. Sir, you discussed about some activities now, copy activity, well, something filter. I forgot to type filter also. Filter activities also there. So what is this? How it is going to work? Before going to start practical, let's see some. Let's explain some more scenarios, some more clarity required. Generally, in the beginning, you expect that only, right? And generally, what happens? Suppose you are working with some pipeline activity. Activity pipeline is collection of the activities only, right? Okay, na? Okay. So what's happening? You're going to work with some source. In the same way, sync. This is your source. Whatever the source, just leave it. Because we already discussed. We have different types of sources. We already discussed. Sync.